All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us tonight at Traverse Area District Library. We're so happy to have you joining us. And those who are joining us on Zoom as well, thank you. And this will be available on our YouTube channel after the presentation, titled Not Just Books. So tonight I have the wonderful pleasure of welcoming Adam, who's joining us from St. Petersburg, Florida, but he's often visiting here, family in Northern Michigan. He's here to talk about his debut book tonight, The Blueprint to Happy, a passion project that he hopes will inspire others to enrich their lives in a meaningful and long-lasting way. With a background in process improvement and change management, Adam has often found himself serving as a translation layer between people and process. Today, he will help us understand how a process can help translate happiness into our lives. Welcome, Adam.
Thank you all so much, and thank you, Kelly, for that wonderful introduction. Thank you, Tattle, for hosting me. This is literally a dream come true, which means you're all in my dream, so no promises for what that might mean. But one of the best practices of happy that is in my book is to count your blessings, not your curses. So I want to start with a little bit of gratitude. I am so grateful to be here with you all in my dream. That's my big one. I'm grateful for the library. I'm grateful for Mission Point Press, who has been an amazing partner in getting this book published, making it look good and professional. If you are a person with a story to tell, I highly recommend checking out Mission Point Press. They're local to Traverse City, so you're also supporting a local business. I'm also very grateful to my Aunt Ada, who you just heard from. Many of you do know my aunt. I don't know if this book could have existed without her, because she has been the guiding light in my life that has been that little spot of positivity when I was in a time in my life where I was really only seeing the negative. We're going to talk more all about how that plays out and what we can do to get more positivity in our life, because that's what the book is about. It's about building a preference for positivity, and the process, because I'm a process guy, is how I did it, and I hope that it will help others do the same. So I'm going to start by asking everybody in this room, by the way, this is an interactive experience. I will be asking you questions. Sometimes I will ask you to raise your hand, sometimes not. There'll be a Q&A at the end, so I'd love for you to have some questions in your head as we go. Feel free to ask them at the end. There's sample books in front of, interspersed throughout, so if you want to flip through the book while I speak, there's some up in the front there, and I will not be offended if you get up and grab them. I do want to start with the question that I asked myself in that first COVID summer of 2020 that led me onto this path of writing the blueprint. This is the question. If you died tomorrow, would you be happy with the life that you're living? I don't need you to raise your hands, but I do want you to answer this question to yourself. For me, it was no. It was a very strong no. And if your answer is also no, this book was written for you to help you get your no into a yes. And if your answer is yes, congratulations, that's amazing. My goal for you tonight is to convert you into a happiness ambassador so that you can help somebody whose answer might be no, like mine is. So what do you do when you have it all and you're still not happy? Because that was my situation. I had a good job. I had a good career path, I had savings in the bank, friends, I had family. What was going on? Why was I so unhappy? Well, I did what any reasonable person would do, and I turned to neuroscience. Like you do. And so I picked up a lot of self-help books. I enrolled in some classes. I upskilled myself to learn more about the brain, because I had this sense that the problem might be me. After years of feeling like the problem was everyone else, I started to think, maybe it's me. So this is one of the first really important things that I learned, is that most people are sitting over here, I'm not alone, most people are sitting over here with their positive to negative thought ratios, 1 positive thought for every 3 negative thoughts. And that tends to create a very negative experience in life. You tend to focus on the negative things. And that was a real eye-opener for me because I realized that was what I was doing. I was paying way more attention to the negative things in life. And even if you're at this 1-to-1, it's still not quite enough. What I learned is that the key is to outnumber your negative thoughts 3-to-1, positive to negative. So how do we do that? Or why? Let's start with the why first, because I'm a curious person. I'm like, why? Why is negativity so prevalent? Well, this is what I learned. Human beings have a natural inclination towards negativity. It's a holdover, evolutionary holdover, from when there are a lot more things that we're trying to cut off our lifespans, right? So there's a snake in the grass. It's natural for you to want to focus on that snake. Don't take your eyes off of that snake until you're in a safe place. The problem these days is that we know everything about everywhere all the time. Because internet and the speed of information is coming at us nonstop, we can focus on all the negative things. And we can start to feel like that is the only thing that is available to us. So what happens is our brains naturally give an unnatural weight to negative events. This is what it looks like. Even though that one event that happened in your day was combined with 5 good things that happened to you that day, you're going to fall asleep thinking about that negative thing. And it's going to dominate your thought process. And even though good things happen to you, it won't matter. Because what matters is what you pay attention to. The other thing I learned is that, on average, 95% of your negative thoughts are repeated negative thoughts. Right? So this is true for me. I'm inviting you to think about what yours might be, but some of my repeated negative thoughts were, I'm not good enough. I would compare myself to others. Well, they're doing better than me. Or they have a better salary than me. Those were the negative thoughts that were reoccurring in my head. And the good news about this is, the great news about this is, once you figure those things out, and you take 1 or 2 of them out of the rotation, you dramatically increase your ratio to be more positive than negative, because those repeat thoughts are on repeat, right? So, to talk a little bit about why positivity is so much better than negativity, is there's this Broaden and build concept that is presented by Barbara Fredrickson. She's a PhD in positive psychology. And she has put forward the theory that because our negative focus tends to narrow our focus, rightfully so when there's a snake in the grass, positive emotions broaden our perspective. It allows us to see things that are available to us. It allows us to feel safe so we're not in a time crunch. It allows us to really look around and see what's available. And it allows us to think long term. So we can build things that don't exist yet in the real world based on just our thoughts alone. So that is when we went from nomadic people that were moving around all the time to avoid danger, to fortifying ourselves, thinking forward, thinking if I start building this wall, 3 generations from now will be complete and my ancestors will be, or my future relatives will be safe behind this wall. So that's the reason why positive emotions are so powerful. They open our perspectives. So great, we know that the secret is to have more positive thoughts, but does anyone else find that kind of hard to do? Does anyone else have negative thoughts that plague them all the time? Why is it so hard? In order to understand why it's so hard, I had to go back to my neuroscience roots. I had to understand the subconscious and conscious relationship, and this was a real game changer for me. This is what a lot of the steps of the process are based on, and it helps you understand why it's so important. So I want you to think about the subconscious like a supercomputer, and the conscious like the user, you, sitting at the keyboard. The supercomputer, your subconscious, is actually rendering your entire reality right now. Everything in this room, you're taking in and you're synthesizing, you're making a picture in your brain, and your subconscious is doing that. Your subconscious can take in 11 million bits of data per second. 11 million bits of data per second. Your conscious mind can only take in 40 to 50 bits per second. Not 40 or 50 million, 40 or 50 bits. So it's up to your subconscious to decide what it serves up to your conscious mind for your consideration, for you to make a decision. And if it already has a routine, if it already thinks it knows what you want, it's not going to ask you. It's not going to bring it to your conscious attention. You're going to be on autopilot. So if you've lived your whole life thinking negative thoughts, it's not going to consult you about those. It's just going to keep thinking them. Right? So the consciousness can collaborate with the subconscious. It can have a more intentional conversation, and that's what the process allows us to do. So in terms of how this works out in your life, your subconscious likes what you like, right? So if you are doom scrolling all the time on your phone, like I tended to do, or watching 5 hours of news after work, after a stressful day, for some reason I thought that was a good idea. Your brain, if you have free time, it's going to poke you on the shoulder and say, hey, you got some free time, pick up your phone. Look at what's going on. What's going on in you? What's going on across the world? On the contrary, if you spend more time doing something like being in nature, reading a book, doing something you enjoy, doing something that enriches your life, if that experience outweighs the negative experience, your subconscious will eventually poke you on the shoulder and say, hey, it's been a while since you sat down with a book, let's do that. Oh, let's go take a walk in nature. It's going to prompt you to pay more attention to those things. So bottom line is this. What you choose most matters. This is a great example of one that I obviously struggle with from time to time. If consciously I say, I want to eat apples instead of ice cream, it's a great way to diet. You don't want to say I don't want to eat junk food because there's no alternative. Your brain doesn't know what you want, just hears junk food and thinks, ice cream. If I say I want to eat more apples than ice cream, but I then go on and eat ice cream 5 out of 6 instances, and I eat an apple 1 out of those 6 instances, my subconscious is like, no, bro, you want ice cream. You don't actually want that apple. You just think you want that apple because your actions and your what you pay attention to matters. That's what I'm going to factor in. So those are really, really important things to understand that set up the backdrop of the process. I'm not going to go through the whole process, because that will take a little bit of time. So I'm going to introduce you to the process, and I'm going to look at just a couple of the steps. We'll dig in there. Before we introduce the process, I do want to make a note about safety. This process assumes that you're safe, physically, mentally, emotionally. If those things aren't present, that is something that I would encourage you to take care of right away at the gate. Find a way to make sure that you're in a safe place before you try to execute this process. There's no amount of thinking your way out of a dangerous or unsafe situation. So just helpful to know. Let's talk a little bit about the process, the 6-step process. The first step is to declare your intent to be happy, and you might think, why? I want to be happy. Everyone wants to be happy. But this is where the subconscious and conscious connection comes in. If you spent your whole life acting a certain way, you're going to need to convince your subconscious that you're serious. So in the book, I describe a technique that allows you to declare your intent. It's a visualization technique because if you ever had a dream, if you're in mine right now, if you ever had a dream, it can be very abstract. Your subconscious works with more than just words. It works with images and feelings and sounds. And so I include in the book a visualization technique that helps you declare to your mind, I want to go down the happy path. And you picture it over and over again. And imagine going down the path with the happy bells and the good smells and the vibrant colors. And you avoid going down that dark path that has the screeching sounds and the sewer smell and all those negative thoughts. It's a great way for you to prime your brain to say, I'm real serious about this. Real serious about this. Your next step is going to be to train yourself to notice. So we talked about what you do the most is what your standard is, right? Well, you're not going to notice. You can't change something if you haven't noticed what needs to be changed, right? So there are some physiological things that you can look out for because our subconscious tends to communicate with us through a physiological way. Sweaty palms, beating heart, talking louder, talking faster. All those are indicators that it's picking up on something that is signaling danger, signaling something's not safe, and that's usually a negative thought. Then we want to interrupt the negative pattern because the way the brain works is all of your experiences filter through the brainstem first. It's the oldest and most withered part of your brain. It wants to know if you're safe. And if it's not safe, it's not going to let you get to your higher rational lobes. It wants you to run, fight, freeze, or fawn, appease. And if you don't get yourself out of that state, then you can't reason. So when you interrupt a negative thought pattern, you're giving yourself the time and the space to access your rational thought, which is where all the rest of this process is. Step 4 is to investigate. We'll talk more in a deep dive about why that's so important. We need to know why. Why are we feeling negative? What associations are we making? Spoiler alert, you have to go back to your childhood for a while. Because all of our experiences, our personalities are built when we're children. and you take everything at face value. Everything is natural and normal. This is going to be a fun Zoom experience. People are going to feel like they're actually in a dream. It's really working for me. So to understand why you're feeling the way that you are is what allows you to really do the next step effectively. This reframe, rewire, also known as tell yourself a better story. The negative thoughts that we think, 95% of them being on repeat, they're stories we tell ourselves. So let's tell ourselves a better story on a regular basis, and that's what's going to build our preference for positivity. The last step is to repeat. The brain likes to learn through repetition, and it loves shortcuts. So as soon as you establish a preference, there's a tipping point that's going to happen where your brain says, this is what we're doing now. I will do this by default. I do not have to worry about anyone else. So we're only going to talk about steps 5 and 6. Trying to get you guys to guide it. All right, so the steps 5 is to reframe, to rewire. We're trying to rewire our brains. Our brains are connected through neurons, and they have all kinds of associations that have been built up over your entire lifetime. So you've got these negative patterns that are entrenched, and we need to rewrite them. And this is how we do that. Life is giving us dozens of opportunities to tell ourselves better stories every single day, right? So we don't want to waste those. That's where I think that my book really differentiates itself from a lot of other works on building happiness practices, because a lot of those things ask you to take time out of your day to do something like meditate, like go on a nature walk, like go be with community. All those things are wonderful, and I can't wait for you guys to be able to do those if you're not able to do them now. But one thing that we do every day is think. We think thoughts. So those thoughts are a great opportunity to reframe, to rewire our brains so that we get a lot more energy back in our days. Because maybe it's one of my mantras that started me down this path, that allowed me to make space for myself to even build this process, is this one. So that the outcome will remain the same no matter what I do, I'd rather smile than cry. Because if the outcome will remain the same no matter what I do, the only choice I have in that is how I respond. And I would rather smile than cry. So that is what really got me into the headspace to be able to build this. This is the trifecta of telling yourself a better story. There's 3 essential components that need to be present for this to be a really successful way to rewire your brain. We want it to be reality-based, but we don't want to gaslight ourselves, going in circles with unrealistic thinking, wallpapering over negativity, just denying reality. We need whatever story we're about to tell ourselves to be grounded in reality, otherwise we'll lose faith with ourselves, with our subconscious. It needs to be actionable, because actionable things is what gives us this feeling of control. And we crave control naturally. When we don't have it, that's when we start to feel negative. So by reclaiming it, by telling yourself a better story, that's where you get that control back. And of course, we've got to be positive, because that's how we train ourselves for positivity. Now, taken independently, like you put 2 of these together, so you put just reality-based and positive, it feels good, right? But it doesn't give you that strong sense of control, right, that we're missing. So that's a good combo. But also, if you are just actionable and positive, then you're going in circles. You're not hitting the mark, you're not factoring in reality. And if it's actionable and reality-based, then you've got the potential for negative reinforcement. Has anybody watched that show Alone? It's a survival show. They airdrop like 20 folks into the wilderness, like Vancouver Island or Alaska. And the game is who can stay there the longest and survive on their own. They can have 10 things. And after X amount of days, there's a final winner, and that person gets $500,000. And season 2 of Alone really struck me because the final 2 guys, David and Larry, were so starkly contrast. David was an optimist. He was somebody who was like building himself an armchair and special, like a shelf in his shelter. Like he was really settling in. He was taking things from a very positive perspective. Larry, on the other hand, Larry just wanted to conserve his energy. He didn't want to do anything superficial. He beat up on himself all the time. He negatively reinforced all of his goals. So he used the beat up mode to get through, and they were the final 2. So I'm not saying it doesn't work. I'm not saying that negative attitude doesn't work, but David won. David won, and I believe because he had the more positive attitude that allowed him to broaden, to build, to be more emotionally regulated, and to be able to go the distance. So that's what we want to avoid with reality-based and actionable. You want all three of these, and you get that sweet spot, reframe sweet spot, that allows you to completely reframe the way that you're thinking in a way that rebuilds your neural network. And that's what we're doing. Like I said, your brain is just a connection of associations that are built over your lifetime. So the investigation step that I mentioned, that's key, because we need to understand where these things came from. What's the origin story of these negative thoughts in order to have a really good opportunity and success rate and changing the way that you think. So that's step 5 in a very high-level nutshell. Step 6 is to repeat. Again, because it's a numbers game. We have to outnumber our negative thoughts with positive thoughts in order to build that preference. I'm not going to lie, it's tough. It's not easy. But it gets easier over time because of the ways that our brains work. Right? So you can try this with anything. If you're learning a new language, it takes time, dedication, and persistence for you to be able to rewire your brain to say that an apple is a palm. So the apple doesn't change, but you're understanding the word that you assign that apple changes. It can be done. So whatever you tell yourself, your brain believes if you do it enough times. So just keep that in mind. That's why this repeat step is so important. You might learn the process and understand and appreciate and agree that it's good, you should do it, but if you don't do it, you're not rewiring your brain, you're not building positivity. And I'm telling you, after a certain point, it becomes so automatic. It's really, truly life-changing. It has been for me. The way that the brain works also is that the associations and the thought patterns that you use the most, those are like super highways in your mind. It's very fast to get on a super highway and get from point A to B. You've done it a million times, but you're trying to change a habit. And when you're trying to change a habit, these new habits are like walking paths. They're very narrow. They need to be walked over and over and over and over again until they widen into a road that turns into a highway, that turns into a super highway. That's why the repeat step is so important. Again, I cannot stress this enough. The path that you choose matters. Every day, you have the opportunity to have an intentional experience where you are choosing the way that you think. And every choice that you make, your subconscious is your biggest fan. It's looking over your shoulder all the time. It wants to know what you want to do. So what you choose most matters. If you choose to go down a happy path, it will go along with you. If you choose to go down a negative path, it will happily go along with you. It makes no judgments, morally or what's even good for you. See the ice cream and the apple situation. With all that said, that is a little teaser trailer for the process. I want to share with you what's possible once you get the process really embedded into your life. This is called the Community Happiness Project. This is my home in St. Petersburg, Florida. I see my mom in the background walking up. In that first COVID summer when I asked that question, if I died tomorrow, would I be okay with that? Would I be happy with it? The answer was no. And I started really embodying myself for the first time, I think, in a long time. I finally connected to my neighborhood because I was home all the time. And one of the things I noticed is that people would walk right through my corner lot with their dogs or just on their walks. And old Adam would have been a little grumpy about that. Would have been a little get off my lawn about that. But new Adam recognizes, like, it's a dirt patch, you know, like there's nothing there. This is a wonderful opportunity to build something that brings positivity into people's lives because it had done such a great thing for me. I knew that if I could bring that to other people, that maybe, just maybe, the whole mood of the community would elevate. And let me tell you, it has been an amazing experience. Let me tell you a little bit about what's here. So here we have the centerpiece of the Community Happiness Project. These signs, it's called a finger post. These signs were ripped here in Traverse City from pallets, cut and painted in my Aunt Ada and Uncle Steve's garage. And I took them with me all through northern Michigan. I had my family members sign whichever one was their favorite on the back, made it a whole group project. And I did this because I'm a geography nerd. I've always been since I was a little kid. And when I set out to do this project, I thought, what would little Adam like to have in his neighborhood? Like, well, that really inspired me. And so these have the distances in miles and kilometers. So they're super nerds out there. And there are places like Tokyo, Kyiv, Sydney, Kolkata, Knoxville. Some of them, I've been to these places. A lot of them are aspirational. And then at the top here is this happiness sign. This happiness sign, for those who are on the Zoom. The story behind this happiness sign is there is a gentleman named Gary King who lives in Gulfport in St. Petersburg. He manufactures these signs himself. He is in his 80s. He climbs ladders with a hammer, and he hammers these signs into utility poles all around St. Pete and Gulfport. And his theory is if people see the word happiness, they're going to think about it more. They're going to be more likely to feel happy if they see this sign all around. And I'll tell you, people love them. People absolutely love these signs. And there's one place in town who sells them, so I got a bunch of them. I got 2 of them, and I put them at the top of my finger post, and I have an arrow pointing down. The symbolic meaning here is that happiness is right here, where you're standing. You don't have to go to all these wonderful exotic places. It's great if you do, but know if you have happiness, you can harness it, you can take it with you anywhere that you go. So that was really one of the ideas that I had in the very beginning. There's all kinds of materials I will direct you to afterwards where you can go to my website and see the very origin of this. The second half of my book is really dedicated to talking about the Community Happiness Project, how it came to be. It started with just literally a stack of blocks holding the space and evolved over time, and it's a very delightful evolution. But I've also got some seating here. I have a lot of folks tell me, don't put those out there, they'll get stolen. What are you doing? Not one thing has been stolen from the Community Happiness Project, like these big chairs. There's lots of things that you could take, and people are pretty liberal with what they take, but that's by design. So we've also got these happiness rocks. This was one of those things that we did very early when it was still a little dirt patch, and I put a basket of colorful rocks out, and I saw people slam on their brakes and hop out of their cars to rifle through these happiness rock baskets because they loved them so much. And we have a little sign here that tells them what to do, ideally. Say, please take this rock home, put it somewhere in your yard that you're gonna see it when you leave and you come home. And when you do see it, pause and reflect on the things that make you happy. Because it's a numbers game. We want people to have more positivity in their life. So this is one social experiment way that I was trying to make that happen in my community. And one of my happiest days is when I was walking in my neighborhood, picking up trash, we had a trash pickup route, and I saw one of the happiness rocks underneath the mailbox in my community. Someone I didn't know, somebody who followed instructions, took that rock home and put it in their yard. It made me so very happy. So I feel like I've created a happiness generator in my yard, which is great for me and the folks around. And then the most recent build here is our curiosities cabinet. And this is to protect all of our lovely goodies from the Florida elements, which I learned the hard way. But all of these materials were sourced from my garage through scrap material and through the community. The roof is a metal roof that I got from a lovely person in Gulfport who just finished a chicken coop. What we do here is we have a trinket trade, so folks can bring trinkets and trade them out for something that's already there. I seeded it originally with some stuff, but everything in there is brand new. It's had 100% turnover, which is wonderful. There's a Read a Love Note, Write a Love Note book that people can share their experiences, and so I've read some lovely accounts of people saying they felt very peaceful here, they're very appreciative for a quiet place to be, that it brings them joy every time they see it. I've seen families regularly come out and take their young kids and play with that basket of toys here easily. And we also have blank rocks, so people can take a rock and paint it and bring it back. So you get the idea. This is something that went from a dirt patch in my front yard to something absolutely beautiful and very cherished by the community. The folks that live closest to me have taken up maintaining it. And oftentimes I'll come out if there's going to be bad weather to get it weatherproof, and it's already weatherproof. People have already turned the seats over. If there's anything that's broken, people will fix them or do their best to fix them. So it's been a really, really wonderful experience, and I could not be more grateful to have this experience in my life, and it just would not be possible if I hadn't built that internal preference for positivity that has been so transformative in my life. So that is a 30,000-foot view of the Blueprint to Happy and the Community Happiness Project, and I would like to stop talking for a minute and see if there's anything you guys are curious about that you've heard so far, or if you've been flipping through the book and you have questions that you come up as you've been been reading and glancing about?
Leslie.
So I do really good during the day. I think I can.
Go ahead.
It's for the
Oh, for Zoom. Okay. Okay. During the day, but sometimes at night, it's that 2 a.m. thing where it's like your subconscious like takes control. Do you have any ideas or thoughts on how to work with that?
So it's great that you're noticing. It's hard not to notice at 2 in the morning when you can't sleep, right? So that's a really good indicator that you need to take action, right? And the very first step of the process is going to serve you well. When you get to after the notice part, you interrupt. There's a couple different ways that you can interrupt. I'll give you the highlight reel. My favorite one is called a battle breath. So 6-second inhale, 2-second hold, 6-second exhale, 2-second hold, repeat. This is a technique that the Navy SEALs used to graduate SEALs because they were tapping out. They were getting very psychologically overwhelmed. And I always say if it's good enough for the SEALs, it's good enough for us. It floods the brain and muscles with oxygen, and it acts as a physiological reset, which is, again, communicating to your subconscious, whatever is turning around in there, I'm safe. I'm safe. We can think about this more critically. The other techniques you can use is a body scan, which might be really great when you're in bed. Just kind of like see where your tension is being held. Gradually relax that tension and just notice what's happening in your body. And that's going to, again, zap you into the present moment because it's all really about safety. There's something your subconscious makes you feel like you're not safe, and getting back to the present moment allows you to feel that safety. And then surrounding scan, a little harder maybe at night, but you take a look and see what shadows are cast on the wall. How does this bed feel underneath me? What smells are around? What sounds can I hear? That surrounding scan, again, does the very same thing, kind of pops you in that present moment. And then once you get to that place, you might not get through a breakthrough moment at 2 in the morning to understand, like, why am I feeling this way? But it interrupts it enough to maybe where you can go back to sleep. And then I recommend you can do these steps over a period of time. Give yourself grace if you can't do them right away. Spend a little bit of time the next day thinking, like, what was happening that day? What might have triggered that experience for me? And get to the root cause. That'll help a lot. Thank you.
Adam, I feel like you talked about tell yourself a better story, and I feel like that's also a good tool. I know I use that a lot when I wake up in the middle of the night, kind of think of it that way, explain that a little bit. There's a lot of examples I know in the book, but.
Oh yeah, for sure. So telling yourself a better story, again, it's building that preference for positivity, and I've got some examples. I like to recommend that people start small. They start with the very smallest inconveniences that happen to you every single day. One example, I went to work in Chicago, flew in, all the travel woes that come with that. I had to lug all my stuff over to the rental car place and get asked all those questions, and they said, do you want the toll pass? And I said, no, because my company is really frugal and I don't want to deal with that. And then as I was walking away, I realized, oh, I have to take back roads the whole way, because I don't have a toll thing. And old Adam would have been grumpy about that the whole time, like white knuckling it, But I told myself, this is a wonderful opportunity to see parts of Chicago I've never seen before. And so I did. I went and I drove with that mentality. It was actually around the holidays, so I saw lots of Christmas displays. I got to see, everything from the cornfields to the city, and it was just a much better experience because of that. Another recent example of when I told myself a better story, on the title slide, I had some media outlets that I've spoken to that has let me speak about my book, and one of them recently was 9 and 10 News here in northern Michigan. And they had me out a couple weeks ago, and it was a live broadcast, and it was a really lovely experience. I drove an hour to Cadillac, an hour back. A couple days go by, and they tell me, you were preempted by national news. So we did not record your segment, and went out live, which is great, but really sorry. And old Adam would have been devastated, to have that wonderful opportunity, really great interview, felt really good about it, and then it just vapor. But then I did my process. Really, the process did it for me automatically. And I remembered my wonderful aunt and uncle recorded on their DVR. They still have one of those. So I hooked up my wireless mic. I put it next to their sound bar. I put my tripod up, and I filmed the recording of the recording. And I uploaded it to YouTube, and I sent it to 9 and 10. I said, that's really unfortunate, but it's a great opportunity for me to practice my blueprint. Is it okay if you put this up instead? And they sure did. They accommodated that. They wrote an article because they felt so bad about what happened. So I had a dedicated article and I had my video, best of all worlds. And that allowed me to just have a much better experience and problem solve. That's one thing I didn't talk about much in my presentation, but there's many benefits that come with telling yourself a better story, building that preference for positivity. One of my favorites is becoming a better problem solver. We have a lot of problems, right, in the world, professionally, personally, community-wise, in your greater state, in your nation, in the world. We have all these problems. And I used to be really upset that I couldn't affect change in a very positive way in a very global scale. You know, like, why shouldn't I? It's just something that was really holding me back. And I thought, one of the things that I can do is where I'm at. You know, I can build a happiness project. I can talk to people about how to change their mindsets. I can solve my own problems because I was really good at solving other people's problems. Mine, on the other hand, were a little elusive. But the process helped me become a better problem solver. It also helps you broaden and deepen your relationships because all the time that you spent assuming negative intent, getting stuck into the negative mindsets, you're freed from that. And I cannot tell you how much time and energy that gives you back. And then the last benefit I like to tell people about is healing faster. That's one that was a surprise to me, but it definitely made sense once I embodied it. The way that the brain works is if it thinks that you're in danger, again, it goes back to that safety mode. If it thinks you're in danger, it will hold off on natural healing processes that happen usually at night, but all throughout the day because we're undergoing microscopic damage just living and breathing. So if your body thinks that you're in danger, it's going to hold off, it's going to be hypervigilant, and wants to wait for the next threat so it can respond. But when you feel like you're in a safe place, the healing process is much more likely to begin. So as you feel like you're in a comfortable place, you're in a safe place, your body will start those healing processes and you'll heal faster. You'll be in better shape. You'll be in better physical condition. So that is one of the things that I like to share with folks as an incentive to stick with the process.
Any other questions?
I have friends that live, well, they live in Columbus, but they have a house in St. Pete too. And so I was telling them about your project, and they said, oh, we know about this because there's these red and white happiness signs all over. I said, well, it's a little bit different. It's a different person, but have you met the gentleman that started? Okay, and so are you now kind of connected in working this happiness program together in St. Pete?
Gary and I have met. He just wrote a book actually called The Happiness Experiment, where he talks about his theories on the word happiness and having it up in places that are visual. So he is all around town. He likes to promote that book, and he's all around town putting the signs up. But I had the pleasure of meeting him. He knows my work. I've shown him the Community Happiness Project. He is a big fan of that, and I think that his inspiration, along with, we have another guy that's local called Easy Signs, and he does a similar thing, but it's words like kindness and breathe and peace, love, happiness, same concept. So it's kind of building on itself, and I very much believe, like, if 1 in 10 people took up this call and decided that they were going to have some sort of community happiness project, whatever form that takes, it definitely doesn't have to look like mine. It can look like Gary's. It can be whatever springs out of your head. If 1 in 10 people in the entire country did that, just imagine the boost in positivity and our ability to reconnect with one another. I think what keeps us divided is often this feeling of negativity and suspicion and this feeling of not being safe. When we put all that aside and we meet each other in that positive space, it just makes a much bigger difference. But Gary and I are on the same track, and we're appreciating what we're doing, and we support each other. We haven't built anything more than that just yet.
So Adam's going to be here selling his books and talking to folks. If you want to stick around, there's cookies, there's some free artwork back here. Adam, I just want you to talk about one more thing because it's one of my favorites. I noticed people treat you differently when you're happy, even though you're, I want you just to talk a little bit about that, how outcomes for you have been different because of your approach.
Yeah, it's a little bit of me treating other people differently and them treating me differently, I think, as a result. One of my, I think it's it's a maxim in the book. There's best practices and maxims to live by that kind of give you bite-sized anchors to hold on to if you're having a hard time telling yourself a better story in the beginning. But my belief is that modeling is the strongest form of influence. So if I come to the table and I have a positive attitude and I'm like all about finding solutions to problems rather than poking holes in whatever it is that you're passionate about, I am modeling an alternative way of being. And I think in a world that is so divided, that's so feeling chaotic and despondent, we need alternatives. And for a long time, I thought, man, someone should do something about this. Why isn't someone doing something about this? And then I thought, oh, I'm somebody. I should maybe stop complaining about it and actually doing something. So even though I don't have a ton of influence in the world, I do have influence with the people that are closest to me, which happen to be people I love the most. So I've seen the people in my immediate circle become more positive, I think because I'm modeling what it looks like. I'm giving them alternatives. They're more open to it. I'm not meeting them from an ideological position that I've adopted for a long time and I don't even know the origins of, but I'm going to defend to the grave. I'm coming with a more open mind and trying to be more positive in general. So I think that has changed people's perceptions of me. It's changed my perceptions of other people because I am constantly assuming positive intent. I very much believe that every behavior that is executed, by and large, is backed by a positive intent. Even though it gets maladaptive and warped and it turns into a negative experience, I do think it starts as a positive. If nothing else, I'm looking for my own safety. That's usually where people are coming from. So it's changed me a lot.
Russ.
I wonder if you've had any experience or consideration about talking to kids in high school, basically. There's been a lot of depression. They're pretty open about it, but it definitely exists.
Great question, Russ. I appreciate that you asked it. I have had the pleasure of speaking to middle school age kids. That's the only gig I've done. Short answer to your question, yes, I would love to speak to more high school age students because they're not given the same alternatives that I'm talking about. I don't think it's in their forefront. But I did get to speak to a children's home. So these are children that don't have parents. They live on campus, school out in the Orlando area. And so they come from troubled backgrounds. They don't have a lot of stable safety in their lives. So I mean, I had to navigate that because I had to acknowledge that, you haven't historically had this, so it might be hard. But my message to them was mostly be nice to yourself. Because one of the things I noticed right off the bat when I started implementing this process is how mean I was to myself, how critical, how much I beat myself up, how much I used negative reinforcement to try to motivate myself, and I didn't want that to be the future for these children. So that was my message, and I think the best compliment I got from one of the teachers was they actually paid attention. That usually So I was really happy to hear that, and I look forward to maybe getting into more of those spaces.
I'm glad you brought it down to the children's age because I think that's where most of the problem is developed. And as a teacher, I'm sure I learned or heard that it was a lot more than the number of positives you gave to negatives. For a kid, I think it's like 17 or something. And it can come to an example of where a kid is extremely imaginative and the wrong kind of teacher or the wrong aspect, the wrong approach, they may say, that kid's nothing but a liar. He tells all these lies. And it might be that he's just very imaginative. And just as an example, I was teaching second grade and it was on into the school year a little ways, and a mom came to the door with her kid. He was going to be a late enrollment, and she said in front of him, "You're going to have nothing but trouble with this one." So, and he was coming from an inner city school where he had he was rough around the edges. But I learned right away that a successful technique for him had been to learn how to read a clock like that and to always know when he was going to get out of there and so on. So my kids didn't know how to read a clock like that. So he became the expert. I bragged on him to everything. He got at least 17 positives for every negative, and he turned out to be one of my better students.
That's awesome.
That's wonderful. And
We need more teachers like that.
exactly, I was thinking the same exact thing.
Yeah.
So I really want to address the adult-child dynamic because so many adults are children walking around in an adult shape. You know? Because our personalities are pretty much baked by the age of 7, right? And by the age of 7, everything we've taken in were things that were told to us. Some of them are our direct experience, cause and effect, the way that we interact with the world, but we absorb so much of our belief systems from our family, our community, our siblings. And if you, as an adult, do not take the time to dredge those beliefs up, examine them, are they true? Does this apply to me? Do I even want this? Is it serving me? And putting the things that don't serve you aside and keeping the things that do serve you and continuing to broaden the way that you see the world, you're a 7-year-old in an adult's body. And so many people are repeating things that were told to them as children. So that woman maybe had someone as an adult say, this person's gonna be nothing but trouble. And they're repeating, they're continuing that generational deficit, unfortunately. And it's totally fixable, right? The beauty of the human mind is that it's neuroplastic. It has the ability to change. It gets a little harder with age because we tend to not regenerate as fast, but it's totally possible. And there are things even you can do as you get older. You can keep your mind active. You can read. You can do puzzles. You can be experiencing new things all the time, and that will continue your neuroplasticity. So children who have those belief systems, you can help them rewrite them, and you just gave a beautiful story that proves it's totally possible. So the more people we have giving these messages, the more happiness ambassadors we get out there talking about how to train your brain to prefer positivity, you will inoculate those folks from the negative forces that will always be there. They will always be there. I don't want to pretend like we're going to eradicate negativity altogether, but what can change is what we pay the most attention to, and that's what I'm trying to help people actualize.
Thanks so much, Adam. Tell us if you wanted to hear it again or you have friends that you think would benefit, when are you going to be in Empire? On Thursday?
Yep, on Thursday, I will be there starting at 7 p.m. Very similar format. It's in a smaller room, so it might be a little bit more intimate. But yeah, I'll be
Empire Library on Thursday at 7 p.m. Adam's going to stick around until everybody's gone, so feel free to ask questions if you have to continue to have some. Get a cookie on your way out, talk to us, and we'll be up there. Thank you so much for coming, everybody, and thank you,
very
Adam.
much.
Yeah.
I'll be right back there. My lovely assistant, Ada, will be helping